Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
And that's how I earned $1 million my first week of sobriety. My name is Clint Hodges. I'm an alcoholic. And I'm glad to be here tonight. I'm glad to be a member in good standing of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I would like to welcome our new people here. Those that identified themselves, perhaps somebody here that did not, could not say, I'm new. Coming in here is a colorful experience for any of us. I saw one newcomer eating a piece of cake tonight. I could not believe my eyes. I couldn't eat anything sweet for about 90 days after I got sobered up. I got here because a bail bondsman brought me to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was living over in Glendale in a garage with 3 other guys. Double garage. Lots of room. Grande. I could not have told you what those 3 guys looked like. I would not have recognized them if I'd have run into them any place. Didn't really ever see them. I just had the garage had been cut up into 4 rooms, and I had a little room, 8 by 10 or 8 by 11 room, whatever it was, sticky linoleum floor, smelled bad in there, had a little cot with a wet mattress on it. A little bulb out of the ceiling. And I had a radio that had a clock in it. And the radio played all the time, seemed like. Even after I pulled the plug out of the wall, that radio played. Have one of those radios, you just can't get it to shut off. And I didn't want to live there. You know, it wasn't really what I ever planned to do. I had warrants out for my arrest. I was in and out of the drunk tank at Glendale and at Lincoln Heights, which was still open in those days. And out of nowhere, it seemed to me, this bail bondsman who had bailed me out a lot looked at me one morning and said, I'm going to take you someplace. I didn't know where he was going to take me. I had no idea, and I really did not care. I thought maybe he was going to take me to back to jail. I didn't know but what. There'd been another warrant or some trouble with not showing up for something. I thought maybe he'd take me back to county hospital. It was okay. It was all right with me. In those days, they gave us a lot of pills at county hospital, and I thought maybe they'd give me some pills. I thought maybe Camarillo, maybe take me up to Camarillo, which was, again, okay with me. I can do the county, I can do the drunk tank, I figured, you know, I don't know if I can do Camarillo. I never went to Camarillo, but I thought he might take me there, and I thought if he did, it might be a good idea because maybe they would discover that brain tumor that I had. I knew I had something. I knew there was something desperately wrong with me. I knew it because I'd been married. I had 3 kids by that time. I'd been married twice. I hadn't seen either wife or any of the kids for a long time. I'd just been living in the garage and selling encyclopedias door to door. When I could get out, sometimes sleeping in the park. But I knew there was something wrong with me because I had done things I didn't want to do. I did not want to hurt those children. And I had hurt them. I did not want to be a bad citizen, and I was a bad citizen. I did not want to be incapable of making plans, and I could make no plans. If you said, let's go out to dinner next Thursday, I had no way of agreeing to that. There was no way I could say, sure, let's do it. I would give you, if I saw you coming down the street, I would cross the street. I stood on the sidewalk at 6 o'clock or just at maybe 10 minutes before 6 in the morning waiting for a liquor store to open, knowing that I could not step into the street. If I did, I would stumble and fall and a truck would carry me a block or 2 away. I came to one morning under the little cot in the little room on that sticky linoleum floor, the one that if you walk across it you can hear your feet go sticking to that thing. And I could see over in the corner a rat, big guy. And he looked very menacing to me, and I was trying to work up the courage to make the move to get up on the bed because I felt I would be safer there because he looked to me like he would rush me. And we both knew he'd win if he did that. I just looked at him. It was like 4:30, I think, something like that. The clock said 4:30. I shut my eyes. I hung on for about an hour. I looked again. The rat's still there, and now it's 4:36. And finally, it was one of those endless times that are just agony for us. I needed a drink desperately, and I had no booze in there. I'd been drunk for a week or whatever. That's about as long as I could drink, was a week. And I looked again, and that rat was still there, and I hung on for a while and blacked out and came around again. Finally, the first light of day was coming in under the door, and I looked over at that rat again, and in some incredible way that rat had turned into a pair of socks laying over there in the corner, and I had been held hostage by a pair of socks all night long. There's a lot of power in a life like that, isn't there? I mean, it was like, there it is. There it is. People had begun to write me off. I had a commander in the Marine Corps. I loved the Marine Corps, and I wanted very much to be a good Marine officer, and I just was drunk. And this guy wrote a fitness report on me, and I saw it because it was an unsatisfactory fitness report, and you have to sign it. And he said, among other things, he said about me, he said, Lieutenant Hodges consistently fails to live up to the low standards he has set for himself. Not exactly a ringing endorsement. It got more colorful than that. I got arrested one morning in Glendale at 10 o'clock for drunk driving. I had been drinking in a beer bar, and it wasn't getting it. You know, I just had it. I wanted to just get well in the beer bar, and I drank there from 6 to maybe 10, and I was just as clear as when I walked in. And just as sick, and just as scared, and just as aware that I really needed a real drink. And I didn't know what was wrong, but I got in the car. I still had the car, and I headed down Colorado Boulevard to go to Glendale, to go to the brass rail or someplace to get a shot. And the light was red, and I stopped. And it turned green, and amber, and red, and green, and amber. I was resting. Guy behind me was in a cop car, and he came walking up and got me out of the car, and they get you, touching your nose and doing all that stuff. They get cute when they find out that they got a drunk on their hands. They kind of relax. I did not look dangerous to him, apparently. He said, "That's the only shade of green we have here in Glendale." And he finally, like all of them, said, "You're under arrest." Total strangers come up to you and say things like, "You're under arrest. Put your hands behind your back. You're going downtown. Get in the car." Our car, not yours. Get in our car. Interesting life, isn't it? And on the report that I read in some lawyer's office 3 weeks later, this guy said, the police officer that arrested me said, "I discontinued the field sobriety test because the suspect was injuring himself." And I want a jury trial, right? I want justice. My sponsor said, "Don't ask for justice, you're getting it. Ask for mercy." It had started when I was 16. I started drinking. I started drinking at a party after a football game in high school, vodka. And I was 16 years old, and I had my first drink, and I still have a distinct memory of that night. A distinct memory of knowing that I had found what I was looking for. A distinct memory of being secretive about the second and the third and the fourth drink. And knowing then or within a couple of months, this stuff is really, really important. And so it all started for me when I was 16 at a party, and when the party was over, I was 29 and living in that little garage over there in Glendale. And the party was over, and it had been over. And out of all of that chaos, a bail bondsman looked at me and said, "I'm going to take you someplace." And he brought me to you. And nothing has been the same in my life since that time. I didn't stay sober from that day, but nothing has been the same. I found out I heard a lady at a meeting that was in 1966, and I was 29 years old, and I celebrated 29 years of sobriety last month, and so I've spent half my life here with you. And I didn't know what was wrong with me when I came here. And I heard a lady sometime in maybe 68, 67, speak from an AA podium at Wilshire and Normandy in Los Angeles. And she said, she since died, she died sober, she said something I've never forgotten. She was talking about the alcoholic's prayer. And I was kind of transfixed by that idea, the alcoholic's prayer. She was talking about her experience in that prayer, and she did something that I have lived most of my life up in my head, trying to supervise my problems. I have asked this mind of mine many times to solve problems that it created, which is a pretty colorful thing to ask it to do, because its solutions are always worse than the problems. I couldn't drive a car without just getting up here in my head thinking if I didn't get right on whatever problem I had, it would somehow get worse. And I would just worry it to death. Or hate an ex-wife a little bit more, or think up another lie about what I hadn't done this or hadn't done that. I was always up here in my head. And that night, in that meeting, years and years and years ago, this lady that was speaking from the podium got me into the room. Got me into the room. I got into the room. I was in here with everybody that night for a while. I was free for a little bit of my mind because she captured me when she spoke of the alcoholic's prayer. She spoke of coming out of a blackout in her apartment in Hollywood, sitting on the mantle over the fireplace with her cat. And there was a little cat food and vodka up there. A little something for everybody. And I'm liking her. And the reason, it turns out, as the story develops, the reason they were on the mantle was because there was about 8 inches of water on the floor. And that was because, as it turned out, that was because she'd started to take a bath last Tuesday and the whole deal had gotten away from her in some way. You know. And I'm thinking, I like her. I would have drank with her. She is a pig like me. I know that. I know that kind of drinking, Gail Wilson. And she said she was saying the alcoholic's prayer, and she finally told us what that is. And it goes like this: Jesus, God, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And I had said that prayer so many times. I had said it so many times. I said it the day they kicked me out of dental school at the University of Oregon. I said it the day I had to leave that first marriage. I said it the day I slapped a child. I said it when the second marriage failed. I said some version of it as a little boy when they got me down to the front of the church, and getting saved didn't help, didn't give me peace. It gave me no relief from the fear that I had. It gave me no sense of belonging, no sense of community, no sense of being loved by God or anyone. I got nothing out of it except a deep knowledge that I was not part of this community or any. God, what's wrong with me? And when she said that, she captured me. I was in the room. I was in the room in a very special and significant way. I had by this time made a couple of important discoveries. 9 months of sobriety was an important time for me. I got my driver's license back at 9 months. I was allowed to see my youngest son without any adults supervising at 9 months. He was 4. I got a chance to go on a panel. Monday night in Glendale, they had a meeting, and they let me set up the chairs in the meeting. I loved that job. I loved it that they let me do that, because it made me feel like I had a right to set up, to take one of those chairs that I had set up. If you're new, get a commitment. Do something so the meeting becomes yours and not theirs. We want the meeting to be our meeting. And I loved that meeting, and I noticed something about that meeting. Every month, a group would come in early, and they seemed to be so glad to be there. 4 or 5 or 6 people would show up, and they were laughing and chattering to themselves, and they'd disappear, and I'd see them again after the meeting. And I asked somebody, and they said, that's the H&I panel. They meet here, and then they go to an institution. And one night, when I was 9 months, they asked me if I wanted to go with them. God, I was thrilled. These people, the guy 12 years sober, a lady 8 years sober, a long time. And they were including me. And I checked with the secretary, and he said, yeah, go. And we went and got in Bill Christian's old Chrysler down in the parking lot and headed out for Norwalk and the Metropolitan State Hospital and the ward there. I didn't know what we were doing. I just sat in the middle of that car in the back seat and listened to them laugh and love one another and care for one another, and it sounded so sweet. And we pulled off the freeway and we went into the grounds, and they said the meeting is in there. It's in a nut house right in that building. And we all got out of the car and we were walking toward this nut house, and when it suddenly struck me why they hadn't included me. It's like, God, I'm getting slow. I knew that 6 of us were going to go in that nut house and 5 of them were going to come back out of that nut house. And my next thought was, I can outrun every one of these old fools. And then I had a really astonishing thought. I thought, if I belong in there and they know I do, maybe I just better do it. Isn't that interesting? 9 months around you, and I had that kind of a thought. I still wanted to run, but I kept pace with them, and we went inside the day room, and the orderly brought a dozen patients down in their blue slippers and white robes, and we had a meeting. And an hour later, we stood up and we said the Lord's Prayer. We didn't hold hands in those days in the Lord's Prayer. But we walked outside into that warm spring evening, all of us. We got in Bill Christian's old Chrysler, and I sat in the back seat in the middle and listened to them sing their songs to each other, and slept in my own bed that night. I hadn't trusted anybody in a long time. Somebody said that birds fly and fish swim and people trust. And if that's true, if trusting is my nature as a human being, I have lived out my second and third choices all my life. The day that I was brought to Alcoholics Anonymous was a day that began to change that. I didn't stay sober from that first time. As I said, I got here in July on the 7th, and I came back after a 2-week drunk on the 14th of August.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
I came back knowing what was obvious to anybody that knew me, that booze and I don't do well. I had gone through a couple of marriages. I had dental school was a horrific experience for me, and they threw me out halfway through. And it was also colorful for the patients that were there in the clinic. I was taking a lot of Dexedrine at the time and drinking, and so we had the clinic on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, and on Friday night I get drunk, and on Saturday morning I'd throw a couple of 15 milligram spansules of methamphetamines in a cup of coffee, and that'll get you up moving around. But it gives you a fine tremor, and they had just come out with that new high-speed air-driven handpiece, and you could take out a quadrant of teeth just twitching. And that was just, no place for me, I'll tell you that. I made a set of dentures for a guy the first year I was up there, and he came up the second year because he brought his wife, somebody was working on her. And he'd see me at the end of the clinic on Saturday morning, and he'd go, say. something wrong with my teeth. I'll bet. They threw me out of there. I drank on Skid Row for a while in Portland before I went into the Marine Corps, before I saw the sign that said the Marine Corps builds men. Wouldn't that be good? My dad used to say, when are you going to be a man? Oh, God, I don't know. My mom used to say, have you found God yet? No. What will you do when you meet your Maker? Apologize, I guess. Who knew, you know? Another baptism in the Yellowstone River in March. Outside of Billings, the water 32 brisk degrees. I didn't find God, I'll tell you that. Couldn't find much anything for about 3 weeks after those experiences. Scary to a young boy. I drank on Skid Row. Skid Row drinking was easy drinking for me. I liked it. I liked it because they don't ask any questions. They just, you know, like, how are you? They don't, that doesn't come up. I liked it. I came out of a blackout in a Skid Row joint one night, and it was lit about as romantically as this room. And I'm sitting across a little carved up wooden table from a lady that I had never met before. I had no idea who she was or what her name was or how long we'd been together. It looked like we were, you get the feeling you're traveling with them, you know. It seemed like she had her things there with her. We seemed to be together. Just a feeling I had. I didn't know her name. I didn't know the nature of our relationship. I would have asked her, but she was sleeping there at the table, and I remember she had chili all over her face, and I knew I'd invited her to dinner. Some delicate flower I'd invited to dine that night. And I got up and got out of there, looked in the back bar mirror on the way out. I had chili all over my face, too, and it was just one of those nights, you know, a matched set pitching slowly forward into bowls of chili. We gave up a lot when we came here, didn't we? And out of all of that, the guy brought me to you, and he turned me over to you, and I was around here sober for 3 weeks, and I was drunk for 2. And I came back on the 14th of August that year, and I haven't had a drink since then. And I didn't do anything that long, horrible night to earn any sobriety. I did nothing. I've earned nothing. I got the gift. I think I asked for the gift. I think it's important that we ask. I used to know that if I just bumped along and lived, this is in sobriety, I knew for years that if I just bumped along living an exemplary life or the best I could, that sooner or later God was going to notice and would help me. And that isn't the way that it is. We have to ask. We have to invite Him. We have to say, in some way, we have to say, I can't do it. Do it. Do it. And I think those of us for whom that obsession to drink has been taken away have in some way said, do it. Do it. I don't know what words I used, and I didn't know the obsession had been removed. I had no idea that was going to be my last drink. None. How could I know? I made no resolve. I had no capacity, no credibility with myself. If I'd have known that was just as well I didn't know. Or I'd have had, 2, I guess, I had no idea. There's some documents that have become available recently. Somebody was, the Freedom of Information Act has made some World War II documents available. Anzio Beach was a beach where the Allies conducted a amphibious landing. And it was a disastrous landing because the weather was bad and the logistics were bad and the intelligence was bad they hadn't really, the aerial photography of what that beach looked like was wrong, and the beach was much deeper than anybody thought. It was like 300 yards from the water to cover. And these guys were sitting ducks there because they couldn't get across the 300 yards of sand to the tree line. And for 3 days they were out there until finally they got across. And those were 3 long days. And guys died and died and died. And some of them, the bullets didn't find each one all the way through, and you sat out there all night and into the next day, and people began to know they were going to die, and they began to pull out scraps of paper and a pencil and write. And they wrote their poems, or they wrote their wives, or they wrote their mothers. And a prayer was written by a lot of guys, I suppose. Prayers found in dead hands bobbing in the surf when the graves registration detail came through days later. One piece of paper had a prayer on it that I was touched by this prayer, because I think it's our prayer in a way. I don't know what your prayer was. I don't know mine that night, that horrible night before the dawn. I remember this prayer. This guy wrote on this piece of paper at Anzio Beach, he wrote this. He wrote, God, come. Come now. Come yourself. Do not send Jesus. This is no place for children. And that heartbreaking prayer, whatever our beliefs are, is our prayer. Finally and ultimately we know we cannot. And in that moment, God overtakes us. We're in full flight from Him. We have no way of going. There is a sign, in a halfway house in Tucson, there's one of these Francesco paintings on the wall in the foyer, and the guy is just, the artist has got it. He has totally captured this figure that's sitting in the gutter with his shoes gone and his shirt gone, and his bottle is half empty and his eyes are empty, and somebody put some verse up beside it, and every cell in your body knows who this guy is. He's me. Somebody's put some verse up at the side of it. I don't know who wrote the verse, but it's very brief. It says, "It's true I'm a drunk, and my soul lives in the shadow of my emotions. And yet my life has had its meaning, and there have been songs for me, but the hand that made the spirit in me and all that I have ever been has deserted me." In the last 2 lines he says, would anyone ever know, would anyone ever guess that my life, with all its ruined hours, has been a search for Him? Yeah. We've been looking under every rock. And we finally come here, knowing that our search is over. We can't find anything. We're destined. This is the last stop on the block. We are going to have one of those terrible little half-lives that amount to nothing. We think we've lost everything and are left with nothing. Ken Devaney says it better than I do. He says we don't know the difference between everything and nothing. We think we have lost everything, and we think we're left with nothing. And the everything that we thought we lost turned out to be nothing, and the nothing we're left with turns out to be everything. And that's this story of Alcoholics Anonymous. That is this story of coming in here, of finding 9 months of sobriety, I haven't had a drink, and I haven't wanted one. Of calling that bail bondsman on my first birthday. Thank you. I call him every year. Thank you. Thank you. At first he said he didn't get it. He was always surprised to hear from me for the first 2 or 3 years. He'd say, Clint, where are you now? Because he thought I was in a drunk tank someplace. The thing I love about Alcoholics Anonymous, when he would say, where are you? I knew where I was and I could say it. Doesn't sound like much on the street, but it's a lot. In our group, one of the promises is you'll come to know your full name and address. And some of us do, you know. Now there's been some reference to the steps. They were read here tonight, as was chapter 3. Chapter 3, isn't that something? This whole business about coming to know that my mind isn't right. That's what that chapter is about. The delusions, the illusions. This insane idea that someday I'll beat it. This crazy idea that I'll be able to drink that there isn't any basic difference between me and the rest of the world. There's a difference. After years of sobriety, there's a difference. There's some people out there that can manage their lives. That's different. I cannot. These guys that they talk about in chapter 3, like Jim and Fred and the jaywalker and the guy they don't name, the retiree, wonderful examples of the goofiness of my mind. Here's Jim. Jim drank up an automobile dealership, and they gave him a job selling cars. And he kept getting drunk, and they kept pulling him out of Towns Hospital, and they kept putting him back in AA. And one day they said, how did it happen again, Jim? Tell us what was going on. And Jim, to his, this is my personal favorite, Jim's mind goes like this. He said, well, I came to work on a Tuesday morning, and right away, if you've heard Joe and Charlie, you know the burning question there is, what happened to Monday, Jim? But Jim got to work on Tuesday morning. He said, I was mildly irritated that I had to work for a company I used to own. I love that understatement, don't you? Can you just kind of hear the rage in it? Mildly irritated. He says, I had a few words with the boss, but nothing serious. Jim. Words with the boss are always serious, Jim. Said, I decided to drive out into the country where I might find a prospect for a new car. That's where they are, Jim. Lining those country roads out there. Pulled into a roadhouse for lunch. We find out in a sentence or two it had, oddly enough, a bar in it. But he was familiar with the roadhouse, and he had a sandwich, and he had a glass of milk, and God, what could be healthier? And it occurred to him, now that he's got the pagan splendor of a full stomach, that if he took a drink and poured that drink in his milk, if he put a shot of whiskey in the milk, it wouldn't hurt him. There's a mind for you, isn't it? That's the mind that takes us back to the drink time and again. And he tried the experiment, and the mind goes like this. It worked so well, I did it again. And then he's in the hospital and back around. And there we are, stuck. Even when we're sober, we are headed back to that next drink. And so we're beyond human aid. We have no way of getting past that. And an absolute miracle takes place here. The obsession to drink is removed from us because we ask and because, amazingly, God loves us. I don't think we could stand 10 minutes of knowing how much. That's what this is. It's love, you know. And he loves us through one another. And he gives us a gift, and it's a weird kind of a gift because we have the rest of our lives to get comfortable with the gift. And that's what the meetings are about, and that's what service is about, and that's what unity is about, and that's what the steps are about. Because my mind isn't good, and my ego is really creating flap after flap after flap. It's just right here trying to take me back to familiar territory. What am I going to do about that? Well, as it turns out, these steps address that problem. I get a lot of relief from coming to meetings, and I get a lot of relief from being of service. But when I take the steps, I get freedom. There's a big difference between relief and freedom. And I was so glad that Ramona mentioned that and talked about if you're going to ask somebody to be your sponsor, just ask them. Have you had a chance yet to take these steps? Have you taken them? Have you gotten at that? At step 1, it tells us where we are. Here's my location, powerless and unmanageable. And at step 2, it talks about being restored to sanity. So that's where I want to go. The question that gets asked around is like, was I really insane? And they told me, don't even ask. That is not the question. For me, it is not. For me, the question, they told me the question is, what would sanity look like? That's what I want. I want to go from here to here. And there's a very interesting thing. Since I want to go there, the question then becomes, can I get there on my own? There's a clue that we should not overlook in answering that question. I'm here. I want to go here. Can I get there on my own? Well, I want to go there. Am I there? No. Gee, it doesn't look like I can get there on my own. And I have to make some assumptions that there is a power that will take me there. There is a power that will take me beyond this point. There is a point at which I have to do something I've never done before. If I'm going to tap into that power, the book has this archaic language in it, and I happen to love it. And it talks about stepping from the bridge of reason to the shore of faith. The hell does that mean? That's right up there with the goose hung high, you know. What the hell's he talking about, Lamar? It's this. For me to step from the bridge of reason to the shore of faith is to step from what I know to what I don't know. And what do I know? I know I have to do it all myself. I know I'm no good. I know that God won't help me. I know you can't trust women. I know you can't, you gotta, whatever we know, all those old ideas that don't seem like old ideas because there are old ideas, and our old ideas don't seem like old ideas, they just seem like the way that it is. Bridge of reason to the shore of faith, to step into a new, I don't drink. I can be kind. I can hear you. I've got something to give a guy that's sober a couple of months less than me. There's an answer here for me too. Step from what I know to what I don't know. Because the magic of my life is at the edge of it. I don't want to leap into the abyss because I don't know it, and I have this idea that security is in the known, but it isn't. If I insist on the known, I don't have a future. I just have more of the past. I got to get out to the edge of it and say, "Thy will be done," not knowing what His will is. but at, okay, what do I know? I ran it into the ground. The best judgment I ever brought to anything got me in the drunk tank. Ultimately, we have to do that. Ultimately, we have to say, I want to form a relationship with God. Ultimately, we have to make a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of this power, because we really do have to tap into power, because we don't have any power and we want power. We're power seekers. Lack of power is not a dilemma unless you really want power, and it is our dilemma. There are some people that don't care about power. We care. We care a lot. Oh, we do it in a very understated way, but we care. And we write this inventory that talks about who we resent and why and how it's hurt us and what we've done. Resentment, isn't that a weird way to start an inventory? Well, those are all the people we see as powerful. We don't resent them unless they look powerful. How do I deal with power? Right, a fear inventory, that's about power. Sex inventory, that's about power. How do I deal with somebody that has yes, no power? And we read it to somebody. And we're free. We look at those defects and say, I'm done with them. And we ask God to remove them. And we get a little freer. And we make a list of the people we've harmed. And we go to them. And we get freer still. And we find a way to develop a relationship with this power. Because it's all the power we're ever going to get. We'll never have power of our own. That used to make me sick when I would hear guys say, well, my life is still unmanageable. Turns out that seems to be the case, at least it is for me. But we have this, we have love. We have love. If you're new here, we love you. We're glad you're here. And it's for selfish reasons, I guess. I mean, there's a lot of healing around the loving, isn't there? But it's my healing. It's the love we give that heals us. It isn't the love that we get. And if you're new, and if you stay here, somebody will come sliding up to you one of these days that's newer than you, and you'll find yourself loving that person, and your own healing will begin. And for more than 60 years now, we've called that Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected. even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.